Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education, and I'm your host, Andrew McCormick. I'm going to get right to the point here. I think that TAB, or at least some version of choice-based, really is the future of art education. You know, when you look at all the outcries from districts and parents, and even employers about the vital importance of creativity, giving students creative choice and freedom is a huge part in shaping them into being lifelong creatives. You know, I'm always bumping into teachers, either, in person or online, who tell me about their transformation or jump into TAB. While I've never been full TAB myself, honestly, I'm not that organized and structured to get my classroom to function that way without having to pull back the reins a bit. I've been choice-based for a number of years. And what I hear from these new TAB teachers is a mix. Everything from, it's awesome, and I've never felt more vibrant and alive in my classroom. My kids are loving it, to, oh my God, I'm exhausted. This really isn't working. So I'm thinking, like with everything, there's this huge gamut of experiences with TAB. There's tons of good, and assuredly there's probably a little bit of bad, and maybe there's even some ugly. So I'm excited to bring on Kelly Phillips, AOE staff writer and conference presenter, to talk about TAB. Now, Kelly is a TAB elementary teacher in Massachusetts, and she has a pretty interesting background with TAB, and I'm really excited to bring her on here in a second. If this talk sparks some interest in you to dive deeper into TAB or choice, maybe you don't want to go all in yet, but you want some more student autonomy added to your teaching style, then AOE's course, Choice-Based Art Education, would be a great resource. I've taught choice-based class a few times before, and I see firsthand teachers developing awesome tools, strategies, and ideas to add more choice to their normal repertoire. Being choice-based or TAB isn't easy, but it is so worth it when you see the excitement and creativity that your students start to exhibit. It's totally worth it. So let AOE make it easier for you. Choice-based is a 3-credit class, and it begins at the first of every month. So head on over to theartofed.com and check out this course and all the other great classes under the courses tab. All right, let's get Kelly on here to talk about all sides of being and moving towards TAB. All right. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for coming in and talking about choice and TAB with me tonight.
Hi, Andrew. How's it going?
Good. So, hey, right off the top here, I want to get some things cleared up. How do you think of yourself in your instruction and teaching? I mean, would you say that you're a choice-based teacher or TAB, or are you kind of on the choice spectrum? Like, where are you with choice?
So there's like 3 real versions of choice when people talk about it. It's like choice-based, which can kind of have a spectrum, and then there's centers-based, which some people do. And I really fall on the full choice spectrum, which is my philosophy is TAB, Teaching for Artistic Behavior. And that's absolute full choice. The child is the artist. It's really all about not having too much teacher-directed learning. There's definitely a lot of skills-based things as well, but it's really all of the artwork and the choices for materials are made fully by the student. So that's where I fall.
Okay, so that's awesome and fantastic. And I just want to do kind of a little disclaimer, because it seems like when Tim or I either talk about TAB or have someone on that kind of references TAB or choice, we always have a couple people that very respectfully kind of voice some disagreements on how things are being represented. Because, and I do want to be respectful, because there are, there's books, there's a website, there's amazing model teachers and even conferences out there that really kind of talk about the full-on TAB system. And I think that sometimes TAB gets thrown around loosely, and people say they're TAB or say that someone else is TAB and they're not really TAB. And then we get people who start to kind of police their own, and it's like, show me your TAB bona fides, because you're not TAB enough. So do you as a TAB person, do you kind of care about that stuff? I mean, are you into a strict interpretation, or are you just kind of like, let's all just kind of like do what we do?
Well, I'm definitely really respectful of the fact that this system is not new. The TAB system has been around for 40 years. And it was developed by some really impressively dedicated educators a long time ago. And they put a lot of work into building this philosophy and I'm really respectful of the fact that like that the teaching for artistic behavior model, people are like, oh, it's a new thing. And it's really not. It's something that people have been working for a really long time on. I do sort of, like there is that sort of crossfire of teachers who come in and say one thing and people are like, no, that's not the tab mentality about that, or that's not the way we do it. And I'm sort of the school of thought where there are a ton of people who really want to try this kind of model and get into it. And it can be kind of hard when people have been doing this for like 10, 20 years, come in and say like, no, like that's not the way to do it. So I'm sort of in the middle of that. Like I'm really excited when people want to start trying it. And I am definitely someone who will be like, oh, actually, the tab model, it actually is full choice, or it's this way, to kind of educate people. But I think I'm really excited about the fact that like so many people want to try this system. And I think that it's a good idea to like keep an open mind about like when people come in for the first time, they're not always going to know exactly where things are coming from. But also know that like there are so many people who have been working for a really long time on this that, yeah, throwing around the tab brand without, really being that, it's definitely, not something that I take very lightly either.
Right. And I imagine, because I feel like there's been times where I've been more choice and, I've dabbled, but I've never been tab. And I know that it's got to be really frustrating for people who are tab to then see it misrepresented and even worse than just misrepresented is like misaligned or kind of maligned, I should say, when it's being misrepresented. So people give it kind of a bad rap or don't understand it because it's being misinterpreted or mislabeled. So that's got to be really frustrating. And I think it's probably, it's all about the approach. When people tell you, there's two different approaches. That's not the right way to do it. Or here, let me suggest maybe some better ways that kind of work, right? So exactly. It's probably all in the tone and the demeanor of how everyone helps everyone else out.
Well, I think the thing about it is there's like so many amazing resources out there. And I think because it's a grassroots organization, the tab community is actually like, it's pretty like loud and proud. So there's like the tab Facebook group is huge. There's almost like 3,000 people and people are on there every day, like posting resources and what's happening in their classroom and things that they need help on. There's all sorts of like resources online, the Teaching for Artistic Behavior website, and engaging learners through art making is an awesome book to get started. And the Learner Directed Classroom is another one. So there's lots of really great resources out there as far as like people who are just like extremely passionate about the tab model. And there's also a lot of really great like literature about it. So if people want to learn and like be a part of that community, I think that it's totally welcoming. And like, you don't want to be afraid that like you're not doing it right if you want to, start out, but definitely be aware of the fact that like that it's definitely a model of teaching that is full choice. It's 100%. And that people are really passionate about maintaining it as that model.
So, every tab person I've ever met kind of talks about their journey or their shift or transformation into tab. Did you kind of have a similar journey? And if so, like, what was it like? What was the jumping off point for you?
I think I am like unconscious. I was unconsciously lucky in my career. So I went to the Mass College of Art and Design, Mass Art in Boston, where tab was like researched and developed. And I had a bunch of teachers, John Crow and Trinji Jensen and Lois Hetland. They were all like my professors at Mass Art. And so I actually was taught a lot of tab and participated in a lot of tab in my undergrad. And my teacher, John Crow, sort of came to me and said, like, you kind of strike me as somebody who'd be really into that. And so I actually did my student teaching in a tab classroom. So I was never like, a traditional teacher. And then I ended up getting my first job at a Catholic school in just outside of Boston. And I went in there like really excited to do tab. And I met I had been surrounded by all these people who were so excited about it and so invested in it. And then I went for it on my own and I got shot down from like so many
Oh.
sides. People, well, like the artwork is like, when you first start out, when kids are first learning how to come up with their own ideas, like the artwork is weird and it's experimental, and it's really like you have to collect a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of really like, if people are used to that sort of like 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
style of art teaching, that like is all about the product, which I think probably 99% of art teachers out there now like don't believe in that, but that's what a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
grew up with. And so I had to sort of like claw my way through it, and I sort of dabbled in having more project-based stuff, and came back to the idea of the fact that I just had to be more confident in my belief in like
Mm-hmm.
what this kind of teaching does for kids, and that it really makes them into artists instead of kids who are taking art class.
So, I mean, you say you got shot down, but now you're loud and proud in doing it. So what happened? Did you change school districts, or did you just kind of get more vocal in your advocacy and promotion of it?
Like honestly, it was a lot of like conversations on the phone with peers, and like, you know, there was some tears and some like real soul searching. Initially, I did switch to a school district where I had a classroom, which was pretty important. I had done tab on a cart, and
Mm.
that was for somebody who I think is more, who knew a little bit more about being on a cart. I think it would have been good for me, but I went from like a classroom to a cart from my student
Mm.
teaching, and I just didn't have that like muscle memory yet to be able to really like fit it into that.
Mm.
And, I just wasn't confident in myself as a teacher. And then I switched to a school district where I had more support and a classroom, and I started to do it. And although there's always pushback from people, the kids were what really like kept me motivated, because I remember I had my student teaching, practitioner had called me and was like, I was talking to someone today and they said their teacher does a classroom like mine, and it was you. And like that
Mm.
kid was so excited that you became their teacher this year. And it just was like hearing that I was being talked about like 3 towns over,
Mm.
by a kid who was so excited about art class, was like, okay, I have to stick with this.
That's awesome. Kelly, I think you are like maybe a magical unicorn, because I don't know if I've ever known anyone who has done student teaching in a tab classroom. I mean, that's a lot. But then also you did tab on a cart. So like you are like Princess Tab, that you got both of those things like under your belt. That's awesome. That's amazing.
They
So
were a
you,
struggle. Like it wasn't perfect, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm impressed. I mean, I did art on a cart for 3 years, and I've kind of had selective amnesia, and I've kind of forgotten about how rough those years were for me. But so
Oh,
talking about the
totally.
shift, yeah, it's tough. So the shift into choice, and maybe it's a little less of a shift for you, but because you kind of grew up with it. But people always want to hear about the good, and I want to definitely hear about the good. I also want to hear about some of the struggles, the good, the bad. But let's start off with the good. So what for you has been some of the biggest, brightest spots of being a tab teacher?
I think there's something about a tab classroom that it's like a growing, living kind of being. And I think that I've never been like so humbled as an artist as I am when I like watch a kid work from beginning to end on their own
Mhm.
idea. And just the conversations that happen in my classroom and the artwork that gets made. I think that the reality is that these kids are like, they're much smarter than me in the way that they can come up with lessons that I could never
Hmm.
think of. And that's just the reality of having a child's brain. And I think that it's so amazing to watch a kid at their level. I think a lot of times administration and parents and outside forces, they want us to have that like craftivity, they call it, where
Mm-hmm.
we have this perfect product. And I think that sometimes that can like take over, and it definitely has before in my classroom, where I'm like searching for this perfect outcome to hang in the hallway to support my program. And I think we don't let kids work through like the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Like we
Right.
don't let them delve into what it really means to be an artist who struggles with an idea, who makes something that they don't like, that like has to work through until they get to a point where they're like, oh my God, I really worked for this amazing
Mm-hmm.
outcome. So I think that's probably the best part of it.
You
It's a
know,
pretty big, amazing part.
yeah, you mentioned something that really got me thinking. I think it's been popular the last 5, 6 years that I've been teaching. I hear about classrooms that are open to failure and accepting a failure and using failure as an opportunity to learn. And we want our teachers to do that, and we want our buildings to do that, and we want our administrators to encourage that. But I just wonder, like, how many times we encourage our students to learn through failure. You know what I mean? Like, we want our teachers to do it because that shows they're being innovative and thoughtful. But then I just think so many times we don't like allow our kids sort of the same luxury, the full engrossing experience of learning, trying something and having it be horrible and then learning from that. We don't give our kids enough opportunities with that.
I think a lot of it comes from like we don't want them. One of them is time. Like I'm an elementary teacher and I teach
Yeah.
45-minute classes with 2 minutes in between. So like I want my kids to have this great experience, and sometimes like I feel like if I curate an experience for them that's really like step by step, and I know they're going to get to that end point that's like yay, that
Yeah.
like might feel good with that short class period. And the other part of it I think is like we have their best intentions. Like we only want them to feel successful and like proud in our classroom. But I think the unfortunate part is like, we're taking that ownership away from them when we're trying to like beautify the experience of being an artist.
Yeah.
Like being an artist is hard. It's a struggle. It's going to take some failure. And I think especially in this day and age, and like I know because you teach middle school, like a lot of our kids aren't allowed to fail like in
Yeah,
their real
totally.
outside lives. And if we don't give them that opportunity in a place like the art room where like that's kind of okay, then like
Hmm.
where else are they going to do it? They're not going to do it in other places in their life. And so this whole idea of growth mindset that we talk about it at meetings and things like that, we have to sort of live it, and we have to be okay with like at the end of 45 minutes having a kid leave like, I have a problem and my artwork failed today, and I'm going to spend the rest of the week thinking about this class and collecting materials to make that sculpture come together the way that I want it to. It's like, isn't that what you want for kids to
Yeah.
have when they leave your class? Like they might feel like upset, but I think that it's motivating. It's a motivational struggle.
Well, one of the things I think as teachers, and whether you're a tab teacher or a choice teacher, or even still kind of like teacher centric and project based, I'm going to do this project and then this project, which I kind of am sometimes. I think we have to redefine, what success and learning looks like. And I think for so many of our kids, education success looks like, I worked hard, I did what I was told, I got an A, and just like not imaginative at all. And they want this like linear, I do this, I do this, I do this, I get the thing I want.
Right.
And like art and creativity isn't really like that, and I'm going to go off on a weird tangent here, but I've been doing a lot of work with like the National Core Art Standards. And one of my favorite ones is artists can make an artwork without a preconceived plan or idea.
Totally. I
It's like,
love that one.
yeah, it's like my favorite one because it's like, okay, here's some stuff, here's some ink and bamboo, and I don't know what you're going to do, but like have some fun with that. And I kind of did a project like that. And at first the kids were like, really like, so what are we supposed to do? I was like, I don't know, experiment, have some fun. And we did that for like 4 days, like no structure, just kept getting out the bamboo brushes and the ink, and they loved it. And then finally it was like, I kind of got into my rut of like, okay, so now let's like put this together. But I tried to give them a lot of different options. But I think, like I said, I think one of the things is redefining success. So kind of talking about failure, I want to give you kind of a two-parter here.
Okay.
So we've talked the good. I want you to think about the ugly, like what's something you tried that really failed? And then I want you to think about maybe something that really surprised you. Like, I thought this was going to be really hard and it was really easy, or I thought this was going to be a slam dunk and boy, this was a lot of work. So toughest thing and then surprising thing.
Okay. So I do think that like a lot of times, TAB in general, like when I think about it, when I talk about it with people, I'm very much like, it's amazing and it's, you really have to do it and it's perfect. But I also want to be like honest with people that like, I go through the same struggles as everybody else. Like I have tough days. I have days when kids are like, not motivated and all of those things. So there's definitely like the realities of an art room are still the realities of an art room when you're teaching full choice. And like, they may be like a little bit different, but there's definitely pitfalls and downfalls. So I just like, I want to be honest with people about that. I think that probably the hardest part is, I think it's probably working with kids who in particular are not yet ready to be okay with that ambiguity that you were talking about, with starting an artwork and not knowing what you want as a teacher. And I think that unfortunately, like kids who come from a place where it's like they're a little bit afraid to be wrong, that can be really, really hard for them to come in and have me say like, okay, this is how this classroom is set up. And, we go through, it's very structured initially. It's very structured. Like, this is how we use things. This is where this is the way this classroom runs. But when I start to like set them free, they're almost like, wait. How do I make you happy? How do I do what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, how do I keep a smile on your face as the teacher? And I'm like, no, like, I'm happy. I just want you to like go and explore. And they're like, no. I can't. It's not, I'm not capable. I'm not able. I'm not worthwhile, as an artist. And it's not going to be successful. Like, so you can't make me. And that in particular, although now that I'm calling this the bad and the ugly part, like that's probably the most rewarding part when you get it to happen. But I have had kids go through my program from beginning to end, and like every class is a struggle with them because they're just not in that place to like be comfortable with that kind of ambiguity. But I also think that when they leave my classroom, that they have a little bit more practice in that, and it's not so scary and difficult when like, they have to go out in the world and have situations that are, they don't have a preconceived outcome. Also, TAB classrooms are notoriously messy, and I think that you can probably get on board with that. It's a lot of materials, and it's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of like child-friendly organization with like big boxes of stuff and like random things. My whole classroom right now is pretty much full of like bottle caps and paper towel tubes and like, just really random stuff. So, you kind of have to be okay with that, and okay with it being a little bit messy. And I know sometimes that can be hard. I work in a school of elementary teachers who are so organized and everything's color coded and everything's really clean and perfectly set up. And my classroom is like, it's just not like that. It's just not.
So what do you think was the biggest surprise for you? Like, I mean, going into it, like sometimes I get this from TAB people and I kind of just want to say like, okay, come talk to me in a year. They're like, hey, I'm going full TAB because it's going to be so much easier. And I'm like, I don't think you understand things. And so that's like a bad surprise. Like, I'm working way harder than I thought I was going to have to. Did you have any of those where things were tougher or when things were easier than you thought they might be?
Oh, yeah.
Or you were pretty well prepared, like coming out of school that like you knew what you were getting into?
No one's prepared coming out of school. Like, even though I had like all of that teaching, the thing is I did my student teaching in a classroom that had been running for 10 years. So like, everything was set up and the classroom. So the big part about TAB is that the space is part of the teachers. It's part of like the Montessori style kind of model, like the Reggio Emilia like style. It's the environment is a huge part. So it's something that like invites kids to think, and it's also organized in a way that kids feel comfortable in the space. So they can like find their materials, they can move around the space freely, they know where things go. Like that's a huge part of it. And like I went into a classroom that was like, you know, just bare bones, nothing. And I had to like, I set up my whole tab classroom, tore it back down, set it up again, tore it back down. Like I was like making notes every class, like this traffic flow stinks. And like, you can't, like, you can't keep the hot glue in the corner like that. Like, you know, it's a problem. And I think that the legwork outside of the classroom is huge initially. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Now, when I'm teaching a class, this is why people think it's easy. When I'm teaching a class, after I'm done with like my 5-minute demo, it's a lot of me walking around being like, ooh, wow, like, talk to me about what you're working on. Like, you know, it's a lot of me going and having individual conversations. It's a lot of me, you know, walking around silently sometimes, just like looking around, seeing what's going on. And so it looks like I'm, you know, I haven't put much effort in, but the initial setup and preparation is really huge. I think it's gotten a little bit easier the more time that I've done it. I'm not going to say that it doesn't ever get easier, but yeah, the legwork and the setup initially is really huge.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And one of the things that, you know, some friends and I were saying is, you know, for a new teacher, you know, first year, second year, who was trained in a college in a very sort of still like discipline-based arts education, very traditional approach, to just like kind of scrap everything and just jump in, you know, right into tab. My friends and I have said it's almost like you have to learn how to be a teacher, like to really kind of learn some stuff first to then like kind of shake it up. Like you got to learn the rules. And I don't know if I still buy that as much, but I think some people who have never done it, like they can sometimes bite off more than they can chew. And it's exactly like you said, they don't realize like, boy, that looked easy. And man, there's a lot of work that people don't see to make a tab classroom like really hum along. So, but Kelly, I got to get you out of here, but I got to ask you kind of before I let you go, you know, since you've been doing this for a while, was there some advice that you wish that you would have gotten as you were starting out as a new tab teacher that you never got? Or what advice would you give someone who's kind of going through this journey and either transforming into tab or has been doing it for a while?
Well, I think I would touch on the thing that you just talked about, which is like, you know, starting out and going online and like looking at what other people are doing is great. And you want to be a part of that community as much as you can. But also like look at it with some like, you know, anti-rose colored glasses too. Like remember that there's like a lot of mess and like stress and stuff behind the scenes. And you just want to remember that, you know, the tab classrooms that you see, like they went through the same struggle that you're going through. So the transition for everybody is really real. And I actually really appreciate that about tab people because they are really, especially people who are transitioning for the first time, they really share a lot about like, this is what's happening to me. Is this happened to you? And then there's like 57 comments like, yes, this has happened. This is exactly what you need to do. You know, this is how to deal with this situation. I think that joining that community and being a part of it, and then also like taking it with a grain of salt. Like some of these teachers have been teaching this philosophy for a really, really long time, and they will give you a lot of information, but also you're not going to be, you know, perfect on your day out, you know, your first day out. And also like tab itself, I always tell people this, like it is a growing, living, breathing classroom. My tab classroom has never been the same 2 years in a row. There's always something different. And that's sort of what's great about it, what I love about it. And it gets a little bit better every year. And, you know, sometimes I have to take a step back and like undo some of the, you know, the things that I've done. So it changes and evolves over time. I would say do your research, definitely. It's not something that you can do without being really willing to be super reflective. So one of the things that I was taught early on was take copious notes about what is happening and like what you need to work on for the next time. So like have like a space where you can write about like, this is what really worked with this class. This is what didn't work. This is what I need to change. And yeah, just, I think sticking with it and being really confident in it. That took me a little while because I'm very much, somebody who likes to go with the flow, and I'm really happy, being, kind of like not making any waves. And then I realized like, oh, if I'm going to teach in a public school and I'm going to be this weird art teacher, I am making waves. Like I have to be able to like ride the waves and like get, if I have an administrator that doesn't agree, like get them on board. If I have parents that don't agree, like take it with, a grain of salt. Like I have to be able to stand up for this model. And, when people say that I'm not doing my best for the kids because it doesn't look like a traditional classroom, I have to be able to say to them, like, actually, the reason that I'm standing here telling you that I'm not going to change is because of the fact that this is the best for the kids. So just really like sticking with it and like having a backbone about it. Totally.
Well, Kelly, I really appreciate that answer, especially at the end as you were kind of like, actually, like I can just kind of see you like snapping your fingers and like wagging your finger a little bit. Like
I did.
So I love that attitude, to stick to your guns. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciated it.
Oh, yeah, this was awesome. Yeah, I love talking to you about choice because I know that it's a big part of your classroom too. So it's really fun to have these conversations.
Well, thanks, Kelly. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
I stand by my statements. Kelly Phillips is a magical unicorn. What an awesome foundation she had in her undergrad schooling to learn and practice TAB. I mean, even with all her training in it, from student teaching, I think she nailed it on the head when she essentially said there's still tons of issues in a TAB classroom, and they're more or less the same issues that a teacher-driven classroom would have. I think Kelly would agree with me that arguments of what's easier or tougher to run, a TAB version or a teacher-based version, that kind of misses the mark. I think it's really about what fits your style, what's true to how and what you want your students to learn, and it's about being true and honoring the creativity of your students. Now, this can happen in a non-choice classroom as well. We might just find it easier, however, with TAB, that TAB gets at that creativity and honoring every student a bit faster and a bit more efficiently. Sure, there are struggles with being a TAB teacher, and if anyone tells you that it's the way to go because it's a whole lot less work, be skeptical. But don't let those initial or even persistent struggles derail you from your journey into choice. Your work transforming or moving into choice is vitally important, and your students need you. They need this creative outlet. Art Ed Radio is developed, produced, and supported by the Art of Education with audio engineering by Michael Crocker. So let's talk really quick about Art Ed Pro. Have you checked it out yet? It's an awesome resource, especially if you teach in a school district that seems like it's always grasping for straws on what to do with PD for art teachers. I mean, can we please have something that's meant for us for a change? That'd be awesome. That's why Art Ed Pro is so great. It's like Netflix for Art Ed PD. It's like the ultimate art education library, so you can access new ideas and videos whenever and wherever you need them. Whether you're a veteran teacher or a newbie teacher or somewhere in between, AOE prides itself on giving all art teachers the most rigorous and relevant PD imaginable. So head on over to theartofed.com/pro and you can start your 1-month free trial of Pro right now. We know you'll love it. As always, new episodes of Art Ed Radio are released every Tuesday, and additional content can be found under the podcast tab on theartofed.com. All right, thanks for listening.